Hello everyone, my name's JMac.
My name's Keith Webb.
We are game developers of the past. We used to work for a company called Traveller's Tales. We thought we'd make a video today to talk about a very special game. I don't know about you, Keith, but
Yes.
It's a game that's very special.
A legendary game.
A game that literally 20 years ago was available to purchase at your local video game store. A game that made seismic waves through the games industry. A game that featured everyone's favourite video game character. That game, of course, was Super Monkey Ball Adventure. Wait, no, Crash Twinsanity. Crash
Wow.
Twinsanity.
Okay, I remember that game.
It was the first game that me and Keith worked on professionally. I was a designer and gameplay programmer.
And I was a concept artist.
You did a bit of design as well,
and a bit
didn't
of
you?
design,
A
yeah,
little bit of design here and there. So what we thought we'd do, we'd talk about a subject that seems very popular with people who still like or remember the game. That is the famous cut content. Because as a lot of people know, we cut out a lot of content while we were making the game.
For various different
reasons. I don't know, like, you always tend to have content that you cut out while you're making games, don't you? Because no one's got an unlimited amount of time to spend on a game, because you've got to get it out, you've got to get it in the shops, and you've got to make some money.
And sometimes things just don't work, so...
Yeah. So what we thought we'd do is we thought we'd make a tier list, because we hear that's what Gen Z viewers like, and there's a lot of people who are nostalgic about Crash Twinsanity appear to be members of Gen Z. We thought we'd go along that route. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at some of the things that are famously seen as being content that was deleted from Crash Twinsanity, and we're going to rank it on our tier list in order of how much it actually was cut content. And, well, let me explain further. So for our S tier, we've reserved for actual cut things that we consider to be content that was actually cut out, something which could have gone in the game but didn't. Then the next tier down, tier A, something that was kind of made as an actual art asset that we could view, potentially put in the game, but wasn't actually, taken to the next step, wasn't actually made playable. Tier B would be like test levels, like either a quick gameplay test or an art test or something that we made into a level for whatever reason. Tier C, something that was concept art, probably something that Keith himself...
Probably something that I did, or the other concept artists, Rich and Danny,
Tier D, we're kind of, we're getting really far away from what I'd consider to be actual cut content, something that was just in a design document or was just an idea in one of our heads that for whatever reason got made public. And then the bottom tier, that's tier E, that's something that just is not even remotely what I'd consider content, something that's just basically been made up or has become gossip, or let's say gossip, or something that someone made up for a laugh and has kind of stuck in people's heads. But anyway, we're not very experienced YouTubers, so please go easy on us.
Not yet.
We're hoping to learn as we're going on. So let's just get straight into it. Like the first thing, hang on. So I'm gonna be viewing things in a little window here on the right. So the first thing we're going to look at is
Bug Run.
The fairly infamous section of the game where Crash Bandicoot would be chased by masses of bugs. So what do you remember about this, Keith?
Right, so I remember seeing it, I remember playing it, but I know John Burton's done a video on it where we can basically highlight the exact area where it would have taken place in the initial training area, And
well, let's have a look. I've got this old image of the Earth level. It's not exactly as it ended up in the final game. I think it's maybe a year before we released the game. Crash starts here. Actually, no, this is pretty old from what it ended up as. But Crash would start in this area, walk past his house here, go down the first bit of gameplay, and then you can kind of see it was kind of hooked in. I honestly couldn't even tell you where this is in the final game.
Yeah, so basically we had the piece of artwork that you're seeing here on the screen. That was created because there was a point at which you go onto the first worm area and jump up, or you could have an alternate route which takes you to the bug run. They would both lead out at the same point, just to give the players an option to test out different gameplay mechanics as you're going through.
Yeah. Anyway, as we got a lot to get through,
yep.
What do you reckon? I reckon this was actual gameplay, almost final quality content that we cut out because it just wasn't as much fun as we hoped, was it?
I think it was a little bit too difficult right at the very start of the game.
Right, so I'm just going to go straight in there. I'm going to rate that as S tier, actual cut content.
Cool, I agree.
Could have been in the game if we'd made some different decisions. Yeah. But yeah, that's a good start. Right.
Okay, cool.
Moving on. The next thing is Evil Coco.
Right.
Hang on, just let me readjust this so you can see it. Evil Coco. This is a awesome model created by our good friend and colleague Chris Abdul-Messiah. I think he just kind of went off on one, didn't he? And modelled it because he thought it would be cool.
That's right. So I think we had Evil Crash. And then I believe, Chris just one day thought he'd model Evil Coco. She didn't necessarily fit into any specific area, so I do believe Paul wrote a cutscene where she would appear.
Hang on a second, Paul we
Gardner,
know him as Fake Nina.
Fake Nina, yeah.
He was a creative director.
Yeah.
For the game towards the end.
Towards the end of Twinsanity. So he would have written a cutscene, some dialogue for her to appear after the end of the Evil Crash Dock-a-Mock stage, Bandicoot Pursuit. So she would appear there, and I did some storyboards for her, and I believe some dialogue was recorded by the actress Debbie Derryberry, who did the voice for Coco.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so there's dialogue there, but it was just a small cameo. She wasn't going to be anything other than appear in one cutscene, and I think it was just for a visual gag, really. So she was modelled up.
Well, Chris could knock out a model like that in a few hours, couldn't he? So I think he made loads of stuff just for fun.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we never really had the time to
implement
to get her in the game or anything. So I don't know about you, Keith. I'm thinking
quality art
I think this goes in tier A. This was a quality art asset that could have gone in the game, but for whatever reason, we never made it.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, let's move on. So the next thing is Cortex UFO section.
Right.
So what do you think everyone has heard about this?
I have very little memory of this.
Was this before your time?
So it must have been before I started. I know there was a talk about in the 10th dimension having a bit where he would go through a dry ocean, which we'll get to in a second. But I think this may be different. My guess is this was a carry-on over from earlier in the evolution stage. There was talk of racing nitrous oxide, and I think this was a carry-on over from that, which maybe I know I saw it up and running.
Let me chip in and tell you what I remember. So we had a very let's try not to disturb the camera too much. We had a very talented physics programmer. I don't know if I'm going to say what his name is,
right?
But we all know who he was. We just haven't really checked with him that he's happy for us to put his name in connection to all this stuff. But anyway, we had a really awesome physics developer. He was always trying crazy stuff out. He came up one day with this controllable kind of physicsy floating UFO thing. We had I definitely remember a test level where we had ants flying around in these UFOs, and the player could get in one as well and chase after them. So it was it was fun. It was playable, but for whatever reason, we never kind of took it beyond that test level.
Yeah.
I think I used the movement for the UFOs for Cortex's hoverboard.
Yeah, sure.
In the Mecha Bandicoot fight. So
right.
I think a bit of it did end up in the game, but yeah, unfortunately, just one of those things that we decided to prioritise other things in the game instead. So I don't know. I'm thinking B because it was a test level. It was playable, but we kind of never made a proper level for it or anything like that.
I agree with that.
Brilliant. Moving on. Right, what's the next thing?
So this is the dry
ocean floor.
Right. So in terms of this, this did crop up a couple of times as an idea, and I think it originally stemmed from in Crash Evolution. There was a section.
Hang on a sec, for people that don't know.
Yeah.
Crash Evolution was the first name we had for the project. We were working on it for about a year and a half, and I'm not entirely sure what happened. Like, senior members of the staff left. The game wasn't going very well. We didn't have much playable. We had lots of ideas, lots of concept art, lots of kind of test level layouts, but nothing was really playable. The publishers were getting a bit antsy, so when new people came into the project, I think it was decided that we just start almost from scratch. We kept as much as we could, but this was the major point when a lot of stuff got dropped.
And that would have been around the start of 2003, I believe, because it would have been just before.
Yeah, I remember 2003. That was just before you started.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Crash Evolution had a section where a chunk of the Earth would have been taken off into space, and the water from the ocean would have dripped out and left a dry ocean seabed. Now, that idea was then potentially going to be reused in the second dimension for Crash Twinsanity, when you go to the islands and the ocean would be dry, so you could run across it.
I do remember seeing some art for this. It's a tricky one because nothing was actually massively made for it. I remember Dan did some art. That's Dan Tonkin, the lead artist. We know he doesn't mind us mentioning his name. So I don't know. It's somewhere between B and C for me.
Yeah, I would say so. Concept art did exist. This picture here that you see on screen would have been done by Danny Flynn. Looking at it, yep. So that's a Danny Flynn concept artist. Design document.
I don't know. I'd almost like put it in between these two, but I don't think that's possible.
So I don't think anything was really created in terms of mesh for it. Although a few of the artists did do some little underwater environment stuff, but nothing in terms of proper layout.
I'm thinking C.
Yeah,
what do you reckon?
I'd say C or D. So
yeah?
D. Yeah,
I'd say it's above. I do remember seeing some stuff that was actually built.
Right.
And I remember talking to some of the artists, but I'm going to go for C. So it's kind of, there was concept art, there was some stuff built, but it just wasn't fleshed out enough for me to consider it tier B. Okay, cool, I'm happy with that. Right, this next one, we're going backwards here. This next one, I'm not even sure what this is. Crate Factory.
So I remember it came up in a few documents, and it was discussed in probably early to mid 2003, and I believe this was going to be, nothing was created for it, but it was potentially going to fit into the second dimension again, and it would have been connected to Entropy, the time doctor guy, and I think it might have been a case of something existed in Evolution or some earlier ideas that were going to be reskinned as a factory, as a crate factory. I think it was dropped because we didn't do anything much with the second dimension, and obviously nothing was created for it. But I do remember, in terms of a cutscene or a story element, that towards the end of it, you would ram out of a box of crates, and water would then fill up the ocean, the dry ocean that we were talking about before, as an idea to then allow you to cross the water. That was it.
Yeah, it's kind of
But that was just
feeling
an
like
idea,
it's in the ideas
yeah,
category.
So I put it quite low.
Oh, this is convenient.
Quite
Look,
low down,
we got one in each. What do you reckon, D?
Yeah, D.
I mean, it did exist, but it just never really.
Yeah, it was
never
just
really got off a peak.
I think it was the least developed out of all of these ideas. Yeah.
All right, brilliant.
Okay.
Moving swiftly on.
Capu.
This is the Capu mini game.
Right.
This was Capu gives Crash a trip on his boat across the ocean to transition him out of the first hub level. I never worked on this, so I haven't got a clue what was planned.
So I think in the final game, there's a little bit of dialogue when you get to the boat, which I think one of our programmers, whose name I probably can't mention because he might not like us to name his name.
I think I'll tell you what, we'll try not to mention people's names if we don't know, but if you ever happen to watch this and we've talked about something you worked on, quite happy to put your name in the comments.
Cool. Well, basically, so he wrote a bit of dialogue saying, "Come across the ocean, furry man," or something weird like that. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
so you might be able to figure out who it was who wrote that. Yeah. But basically, so then the screen cuts to black, and then you're in the iceberg lair. But I think in terms of...
It was going to be a mini game. Some idea for a mini game.
That's right. So in terms of to allow the kind of no cutting to black and to allow, the continuous... the feel of the game.
Yeah, it was all about streaming, in 2004.
So the boat would go across the ocean, and then in order to, as a little mini game, Crash would stand on the top. Piranhas would jump out of the sea, and you'd be able to just spin them back and knock them back, for maybe 30 seconds or something.
I see you have illustrated that here.
There he is in there. The captain of the boat, Capu. So Rich Elban, one of the earlier concept artist, did some artwork for a lot of the Papu's tribesmen. And I think I took one of his characters to refit it into this. So the character there of Capu was actually designed by Rich. I don't think that was his name, but we took him out.
But we never modelled him, did we? We never modelled him. No, I see here you have him saying Z.
Yeah,
that's the internationally approved cartoon language for being asleep.
That's true.
Or, Keith, is it Cortex N rotated 90 degrees? I don't know.
Wow,
probably not.
Yeah.
But anyway, I reckon this never got beyond. Well, I don't think we've got concept art.
Yeah, the boat was built.
But that was in the game for other reasons.
Yeah. So it was just repurposed. Yeah, put him on concept art. Yeah.
Well, there's concept art right here. So that's one level above. Right. The next thing, pretty interesting.
Foofie.
The infamous Foofie. Now, if you're a real Crash Twinsanity nerd, you will know that this was originally in Crash Evolution was going to be your companion through the game. It was going to be like a kind of lasso that you could fling out. You could swing on it like a rope.
Yeah.
And it would be Foofie that would kind of link Crash and Cortex together so that they could work co-op mode.
Yeah. So here's something in terms of some recent documentation. I believe Foofie originally started out as a yo-yo. As an idea for a yo-yo. Yeah, you read that.
Yeah.
So it was a yo-yo, but also you had Jack and Daxter. So you had main character Jack and Daxter, and I believe that was the Crash and Foofie.
I do remember speaking to the American producers from Universal. They loved the way when Jack spun round.
Okay.
That Daxter, the kind of weasel thing, would kind of trail behind him.
Yeah.
And they were really up for having something else that created that kind of trail behind the player as he moved around and as he spun and that kind of stuff.
So that's possibly how this came about.
Yeah. But this was this idea was before I joined the project in February 2002, I believe. This was already thought up. There was loads of concept art, and it was working in the game for quite a while. I think it never really worked too well. We had a thing where you could kind of lasso something above you and swing across a gap. That never really worked that well.
But there's some footage online of a test level of it.
Yeah. Well, maybe afterwards we can edit that in.
Let's do it now.
But what ended up happening, we kind of kept the idea, but instead of being an alien snake thing, it became Nina Cortex's extending robot arms. So a lot of the gameplay was reused for that.
So the other thing was Foofie would latch onto something called Chi-Chi grass, which it liked. So that's what
Yeah.
you'd use that to swing. And then with the Nina idea, that was originally going to be changed to cute little furry animals that she grabs onto, but eventually I think it was just little hooks and
Yeah, so this was an idea from the original lead designer, who I haven't spoken to for a while, so I don't know if he'd be happy for us saying his name, but once again, happy to give him a shout if he ever watches this video. So I reckon, I don't know, this is kind of like it was in the game, just a bit different.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where to put it really. Maybe we should put it here,
Put it in actual cut content,
because it was actually working and
exactly,
playable and everything like that.
It was quite far developed.
All right, brilliant. Moving on to the next thing. Next we have Hanging City.
Right.
Is this because shall we do the next two together?
Yeah,
Because
do the
we've
next
got
two together.
Hanging City and we've got Balloon City.
Yeah. So,
And if I remember rightly, it's pretty much one and the same thing.
So the again, back to evolution, there were 5 different planets that were combined together to make one. One of them was called a balloon world, and it would have been a area where you have the balloon at the top, and then you would have a city, a hanging city. So a hanging city is technically an area inside the whole balloon world, so they are the same thing. But you'd have the hanging city, and then further below you'd have something called the trash market.
I remember that.
So more kind of, you had the rich tribe at the top and the more poorer tribe at the bottom.
Yeah.
And the elements there. So obviously this was built in some capacity.
Well, my memory for this, like I was a level designer at the time, so I was creating like really simple mesh levels. I definitely remember making this in a simple mesh level, and as you can see here, we have some more complete art courtesy of Dan after he joined. And for the Hanging City, this is this like Danny Flynn and Rich?
Yeah. So Danny Flynn. Yeah. So Danny Flynn would tend to draw stuff, and then Rich would colour it in. I believe there's some art which we're going to pop up on the screen now that Rich did, and also some Danny Flynn art that they did separately. But they tended to sometimes do stuff together.
So I reckon this has got to be in the kind of test level category, because we can see a level right here.
That's right.
But I think this was just Dan doing an art test. I reckon Dan was working on this right at the point where we kind of said we need to start from scratch and like rethink a few things. So I guess this comes in the test level category.
Yeah, cool.
Right,
okay,
next
John, next one.
I think this is the Windmill level. So this was it's possibly not as famous as some of the other cut content, but this was like in the middle of development. Loads of the team were working on kind of cutscenes and characters and dialogue and stuff like that, and I was getting a bit frustrated that we weren't getting that many levels finished. So I thought, I'm just going to take all the art assets we've currently got for the Earth level, I'm going to just mash it all together, get a whole level playable from start to finish. And the reason why it's called the Windmill level is because it had a windmill at the end. It didn't really look anything like this. Keith, afterwards, you made this concept.
I made it look nice, John.
You did make it look nice.
Or nice-ish.
Like if you look in the background here, these little spinny platforms. This was kind of like what the level was all about. You were running along on these platforms. There was spinny obstacles. It had all the enemies in. But anyway, so it was. I don't know. It was kind of above a test level, but below a finish level.
Yeah. So in some.
So if I had to, I'd kind of put it. I don't know. Maybe between A and B. The problem was it wasn't planned out as part of the whole game, so it didn't really fit in anywhere.
But it did, because if you look at it afterwards as an afterthought, there's some documents that place it just before the Totem Hokum God thing as a bonus.
Well,
stage.
I remember speaking to Paul, and he said he had the idea of it becoming known as Ocean Commotion, and kind of taking place over the ocean, which is what you can see here. It's over the ocean here in Keith's concept art. So I don't know. I'd kind of place it as a test level, because we never really went back to it to take it beyond. It kind of had like decent art in it, but it needed a lot more work to be in the final game. So
does any footage of it exist, John?
Only in my head.
Right.
It probably only ever existed on my PC.
Can you kind of like do that.
I don't think we have the technology for that kind of stuff yet, but maybe soon. Okay. I don't know. So unfortunately, that's lost to the mist of time. Yeah. It's never going to turn up on a demo disc, but it was a whole playable level. Anyway, moving on. We might come back to that a bit later for a reason you might guess at, but let's move on to the next one. Okay. So, fake crash. Right. Seen here. I never. You're going to have to talk about this one. This is obviously your art.
Crash. So I believe fake crash originally originated in Japan from like some adverts. I could be wrong, but some commercials for Crash 2 or something like that. He was the mascot character for that. Yeah. So we tried to get him in the game. I think somebody may have modelled him. Chris may have modelled him. But we just wanted to whack him in as a cameo. The battleship level, either there was some talk at one point of the battleship moving as you're on it, so you would see the ocean as you go by in the background. And just as a way to get him in, he was going to be marooned on a little island with Crunch again, who we'd built but didn't really fit into the actual game. So yeah, they'd just be there in the background. So there's a bit of concept art of them there, and also on a big picture,
I think I've got some.
Which will show up there. Is he there? Yeah, there he is.
Where is he?
You can just really see him.
Where?
There you can see down a bit. There you go. So it's the same.
Oh right, he's sitting on this island.
Yeah, that's
right. Oh right, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there was also, when we were getting towards the end of the project and we were trying to figure out how to incorporate the
no, we've already seen that.
The gems and the museum, in terms of how you display the artwork. Yeah. There was talk of Crash and Crunch possibly being a museum area where they would show, but that was just again an idea that was never really fleshed out.
So what are you thinking?
So he's concept art, isn't he?
Yeah, concept art. I mean, I'd say it's not your best work, Keith. You obviously never got a chance to colour it in. I think you could have done a bit better with that.
Cheers,
but,
John. Thanks for that.
We were all pushed for time, weren't we?
Thanks, John. I appreciate that.
Right, next. Right, what's this? Industrial plant. So I read this on some Crash fan site.
Right.
I don't think there was never anything as an industrial plant.
Yeah.
This is a bit of. Is it Danny Flynn and Rich?
So this is again
art?
Danny Flynn and Rich concept art. This is from Evolution, and in the Earth stage I mentioned before with the dry ocean seabed. Again, I didn't work on it, so this is just from documents that I've read. There was a Cortex oil rig laboratory, so I think this was concept art for what that would look like, probably very early concept art. This here actually evolved into the Iceberg Lab, so you can see different artists interpreting it in different ways as it then became the final thing. So this is almost pre-Twinsanity concept stuff for the Iceberg Lab.
Cool. Well, I'm thinking this is going to go into just concept art, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Although it did turn into the Iceberg Lab, as you said.
Concept art,
I think we leave it there. Right, what is next? Security Insanity. I don't know anything about this.
So, I believe test levels of this were created. Coco, who wasn't playable in Twinsanity at all, her role was going to be more kind of like Matrix hacking stuff, a bit of kung fu. She had those moves, and I believe I do remember seeing that playable at some point.
Really?
Yeah. There's documents for this that exist, and some designers did work on it. But where it was basically Coco would hack into a kind of Matrix style CPU level. It would have the scientists, the Cortex scientists would be in there, and to be fighting them and various other things. Again, we'll just put this into design document ideas, but where it would take place.
So you're thinking D?
Yeah, and it would take place before the airship, and original ideas you were going to go to the third island to get the airship if we had time to create it, and that's what that is. So it would take place just before you kind of have to hack into Cortex's old lab to get it. So so again, just document stuff, but it did crop up in quite a few documents. Yeah.
Did it? We have located all the old design documents, so we might be
Yeah, we'll
making
do some
more
updating
videos.
Yeah,
so
some more videos on this.
don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button if you want to be kept up to date on that.
Crash that like and subscribe.
Crash that subscribe button.
So you can see we practiced this before.
Yeah, we thought about this in advance.
Yeah.
We're professionals.
The videos will get better as we do.
No,
them.
I don't think they will.
They'll
They'll stay rubbish forever. Right, next thing.
Okay.
The Komodo Bros Crash Course race minigame.
Right. So
I never heard about this until Keith told me this morning.
Okay. So I think this came. So when I mentioned the nitrous oxide racing stuff from Evolution, I believe there was talk of trying to whatever was done there to repurpose it for Twinsanity. And the Komodo brothers didn't have any, they didn't fit into the game anywhere else. So I think this mostly came from me and Chris, and I don't even know if Paul knew about it, talking about this. But it would be a little kind of racing thing, similar to Outrun, with where you'd have Cortex still in his wig in the driver's seat.
This sounds like some pie in the sky stuff.
And
we never had any
oversight.
gameplay.
No, we never had
any gameplay of driving in cars or anything like that.
But
funnily enough, you may not know this, originally Traveller's Tales was trying to make a new Crash Team Racing game before we got given Twinsanity.
Yep.
So maybe that's a topic for another day.
About that later. But yeah, so this is just design document ideas, but it does crop up in a lot of concept art, and it was something that was considered at an early stage, yeah.
Right, moving on. This is something that a lot of people have asked me about on YouTube comments. This is the lava caves level, and the thing is, there was you can see here there was a level made which is called the lava caves, but we never planned to have a level in the game called lava caves. It was never part of the plan, was it? But I think what this was, Dan, the lead artist, just made some art he needed to test, and I think we used a lot of the textures, and a lot of the stuff from here was used in the final dimension.
Right.
So I actually asked Dan about this. He said it was just a kind of an art test for him that he happened to take some screenshots of that somehow got made public.
Yeah. So as far as you know, this was never going to be.
As far as I know, it never existed outside of Dan's computer.
Yeah.
But he obviously did use these textures in the rest of the game. So.
There's another piece, a screenshot that we'll show now, which is a lava temple, which was unrelated to this, which was from Evolution. So I think we might talk about that in a later video.
Here? Oh no, that's that screenshot below. That's another one.
That one.
Yeah, this is something completely different. This was from. Oh, hang on, I'm obscuring it. This was from Crash Evolution. This is completely different. This was. I can remember this. You could. I remember flying around in it and running on everything. But this was. It never really got beyond this area you see here, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So this isn't the lava caves, but this is. I'm not even entirely sure if you can see my mouse pointer. I'm hovering over the thing on the bottom right. But yeah, this is just a test level for Dan to test his art that he was making. So. I don't know, what do we call it? I guess it is a test level.
Test level, yeah, test level.
But not a test level that was ever supposed to go in the game.
Yeah.
So, right, moving on.
Okay.
The next thing is...
This gives me nightmares.
Ugly Cortex.
What is it, John?
I never saw this until this morning as well.
Right.
This is obviously Paul Gardner's art style. You can spot it anywhere. I don't remember this ever being a thing to go in the game. I think Paul just made it for a laugh.
So this is, from what I know, speaking to Paul and also some other stuff, this is early on, very, very early on, probably late 2001, when he was starting to model Cortex just off his own back, and he loves this strange looking thing. We might get him on one time to talk about it.
Did he ever model the rest of the body? Is this actually a 3D model, or is it just a drawing?
3D model, yeah.
Did he make the rest of the body?
He made the rest of the body, no. I think we get Paul to talk about that. But this was way.
I wouldn't even
early.
say this is concept art.
No,
this is just Paul messing around, having a laugh. So where would you put it? It exists because Paul drew it, but it wasn't necessarily supposed to go in the game ever, was it?
put it on E.
You put it on E. Fake news. Our first fake news.
Sorry.
I mean, yeah, Paul did a drawing. It's pretty cool. It looks demented, but it was never supposed to go in the game. So yeah,
Paul,
our first bit of
comment,
fake news.
Comment below if you disagree with that, Paul.
Right.
Cool.
Moving on.
Okay.
Rehab Lab. Another thing that I was never involved in.
Right. So this would have been as soon as you get into the 10th dimension. Crash and Cortex's personalities would switch, so you'd be able to control evil Crash, and you'd have to swing good Cortex around to basically just anger him enough to turn him back into evil Cortex. So it was a small little level in which you would just basically humiliate good Cortex. Nothing, I believe, was made for it. Interesting enough, I did I think I started to do one of those level, title screens for it. So it must have made it quite high up in terms of the potential of it being developed. But I don't think anything more was developed. Maybe we get Paul to talk about this because
I guess it's one of those things. We had it in a design document. You made the concept art we can see here, but we just concentrated on other levels.
Yeah.
We needed to get a game out, and we worked on the levels that ended up in the nth dimension instead of this one.
So yeah, put him in concept art.
Concept art. Right, moving on. Another thing I know nothing about.
Okay.
Giant tree.
Right, giant tree. So let me get this straight. Because something confused me about this, and somebody else emailed me about this recently, and I was trying to figure it out. So my understanding was the giant tree is on the second island, and we obviously never did the second, in terms of the three Crash Islands. The second island, we never did that. But something that always confused me about this piece of art is, why is Nina there when she wouldn't have been introduced into the story yet? So I did a bit of
continuity
research. Yeah,
problem.
but no, I looked into the documents that you found, and this would have been in the second dimensions version of the second island. So yeah, this is where it gets confusing. So there would have been two versions of all three islands at one point, and this was quite early on in Twinsanity.
Yeah.
But it also explains why the battleship is then repurposed again as a background thing, and you can see a little walrus there. Rusty Walrus is there. Yeah,
check
cool.
that out.
Yeah, and also
another thing I've noticed, if I could chip in, originally Nina was, instead of grabbing onto little hooks or rings as she did in the final level, she was going to be grabbing onto little cute things because she just wanted to grab hold of them, because that's what girls like to do apparently.
Right. And then if you scroll down further, if we can see it, he's not on here. If we go into, do you want to go
what
into
am I looking
at? The actual, we got it there.
Giant tree concept.
Yeah, so go down there. There's a little plant from Evolution.
Something else from the Crash Evolution era.
And John, just go to that next document.
Yeah. Ooh. All right, we're loading up a Microsoft Word document.
We might have to edit this out if it's got confidential
if it's too boring.
Yeah. Scroll down.
Yeah.
Scroll down here. Scroll down. Act 1. Ocean Commotion. Scroll down. I just found this morning. Where is it? Tree snag airbag.
True.
never heard of that before.
I've never
but this is it. So there you go.
Wow.
Cortex. So we'll have to do some more research into that, because obviously it had a name.
But I think it didn't get that much further than this document.
I mean, it could just literally have been in this document, and I think
Paul probably made this because someone told him he had to make it before a milestone.
Maybe he just made it this morning.
Right.
No, but we'll talk to Paul about it. But
right, let's close that.
Yeah.
Let's close that. So, I
Concept
don't know.
art.
It's kind of parts of it were just in the design document, never went anywhere. But you also made concept art of it, so I guess it goes in concept art. Right. The next thing. Hang on. Let me just zoom out of this. Next thing, Ostrich Cave. I didn't know that anyone thought this was a level until recently. Someone asked me about it on YouTube.
Right.
This is just something that Keith did in his... No, you think it's more than that?
No, yeah. Because for a while I thought, did I just come up with it? But no, because again, if you go into the folder,
Yeah. Hang on. Where are we going? Is it Windmill?
Yeah, going to Windmill. Yeah. There's a lot. There's stuff.
What have we got here? So we've seen this.
The thing, yeah. There's the thing, the ostrich. But
we've seen that already.
Got the document.
Right. Let's load up this document. Ocean commotion. What is this? There's nothing in it.
Okay, so go to the other folder.
Cool, blimey, there's loads in there.
Just click on the Word doc.
A whole new dimension. Oh, blimey, look at all this.
Right, so summary. Has it got the images in it? Okay, but it's mentioned in here. Final Jetty, Windmill, Hog Wild. So...
Right, so this was going to be Crash riding on the pig.
Yeah, but it was
changed.
He's
going to be riding on an ostrich.
So they changed it from pig to an ostrich, but it was
more
than concept art. It was in a document and it was discussed at one point. I believe we were just talking about this off camera, but one of the producers from Universal may have proposed it.
Oh, look at this. Yeah, we had loads of... this was our way of doing a quick level design. I can't even remember what it means, but it was supposed to be like the little bits of gameplay you did and how it would progress through the level.
Yeah. What else is in there, John?
We've got some GIFs.
Yeah, right.
Oh, look at that. I reckon that was drawn on a whiteboard, wasn't it, and printed out.
Yeah.
We had this crazy printable whiteboard.
That's it. So
this looks like we haven't spoken to him, so we won't say his name.
Won't say his name, yeah.
But this was our producer from America.
We think it was.
We think he did this. So I think this, so this windmill that started in my test level kind of persisted for a bit, and there was a windmill in the game, wasn't there? Someone modelled it and put it in one of the levels.
Probably.
Anyway, well, glad that wasn't a complete waste of time.
Yeah. Right.
But anyway, look at all this. Let's get rid of all this. So then I would say this isn't fake news like I thought it was. Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of it's
a documented
just in a
idea.
design document.
Yeah.
Keith did do this picture, but we've kind of already
talked about
that and put it up here for the test level. Yeah. So,
but no, there was more to it because I was confused when I looked at it where it came from. But there obviously was a reason for me to draw it. I didn't just kind of create it out of nothing. So, yeah.
Right, let's move on. Right, good Cortex. I never saw this until yesterday.
Yeah.
What do you think, Keith?
So he is, when I mentioned about Rehab Lab a little bit earlier, where he had the evil Crash and good Cortex mechanic. Dialogue was recorded.
Oh, really?
For it. Yeah, dialogue was recorded. So who was the Lex Lang would have done some voice over stuff for it. And I can't remember if he was ever modelled. Chris might have started to model him, but I don't recall him. I can't recall, if he was modelled. So put him on. I think design document ideas. I mean, obviously he exists as concept art, but he's just a.
This took you about 10 minutes to do this bit of concept art.
Less than that.
Less than that.
Yeah, 2 seconds I did it.
Yeah, sounds like we recorded loads of dialogue that. Yeah. Just in case we got a chance to.
Well, they had to do it all at the same time, so.
Yeah. We only got them in the studio once, didn't we?
I think so.
I wasn't involved in that at all.
I don't think
it was done over in America, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right, moving on. What's this?
Twin Zoo. So my this was early on. So this was early on in 2003. Again, nothing was created for it, but again, I have a feeling it was when there were leftovers from Evolution and figuring out how some of that stuff could be incorporated into the story that became Twinsanity, or into the levels, into the dimension.
Yeah.
This was an idea, and there was more to it.
Hang on, we've got another document.
You got another document. Yeah, it's mentioned in the documents. We can probably see what the date was.
Hang on, let's make this a bit bigger so people can see it. Twin Zoo.
So there he is.
Good Dr. Cortex reveals that the twins are characters from evil Dr. Cortex's distant past.
Right.
Crash, and Cortex. Oh, no, wait, I get it. Crash and Cortex.
Yeah, together, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I never heard about this till yesterday, but obviously
Yeah,
I wasn't.
I
I don't know. What do you reckon? I think this was just
It's in documents.
in documents.
Yeah, it's in documents. Yeah, yeah. Because nothing was created for it that I can remember, and I don't remember doing much concept art for it, other than placing it in the stage somewhere. I did a couple of creature designs for it, maybe. Yes, so I think that, and also I think it was going to incorporate all the unused characters and models like Goatman and all this stuff that we'd developed for Evolution, just to repurpose it and use it in the game. So
like there's been other. I think I made a few videos about these enemies that were from Crash Evolution. Like, we were always trying to get them back in the game, weren't we? But I don't know, it just never really worked. These old models, they were too complex. It was making the PS2 slow down, like, you know, stuff like too many polygons, too many bones. We just we didn't manage to get that much back in, did we?
But so I think this would have been a way to get them in there. So that possibly is where that idea came from. Yeah.
So I already dragged that to design documents. Is that what we wanted?
Right, yeah, that's right.
Right, next one. We've already used this image before, but this is, people have spoken of an underwater dimension. But I think that's just completely made up, isn't it? There was never an underwater dimension.
I think the confusing thing is this image, and I was looking at this, is not actually underwater. It's the dry ocean seabed, and it's the stars and the night sky in the background. So this is actually.
So it looks a bit like it's underwater.
Yeah. So I think that. So this is the dry ocean stuff that I talked about before.
Yeah. So unfortunately, underwater dimension is just fake news, I'm afraid. Right, the next one's potentially interesting because I didn't know anyone else had done anything about this. So there was
stories on this,
an idea of a train level.
Right. So what do you remember of it?
I remember I was fiddling around in Agent Lab, our amazing AI tool, and I had the idea of trying to recreate a kind of classic Crash 1 style level where you're just kind of walking down a straight path with obstacles in the way. I thought it would be quite cool to have it on the back of a moving train, because, you know, that's always cool when that's in films. You know, GoldenEye had a train level that was really good. Indiana Jones, yeah, all the classics. So I made this proof of concept of a static level, and what would happen is I made lots of bits of background into moving entities which would spawn in the distance and kind of like move past. So it created the effect of being on a moving train, and it actually worked quite well. And I showed it to everyone, and everyone thought, yeah, it's kind of cool, but we don't think there's going to be a train level in the game. And I thought that was where it kind of ended up. But it looks like perhaps some other people got on board with the train idea. And Keith, this looks like it probably took you about 30 seconds.
Thanks,
what do you reckon?
It took me 7 days to do that. No, can you remember when you would have done that test?
It would have been in 2003 sometime.
Early 2003, because this...
Probably mid 2003.
Because this, I think this was in one of the first couple of weeks when I started. And I think it was at the point where we're thinking up what specific areas could go into the new Twinsanity. Then I think it was a whole new dimension was what it was called. And so, yes, I believe this came about from Paul, or whoever was in the lead designer at that point, was seriously considering it, but I think it came about from an idea that Chris had actually, in terms of, because they had, when they were trying to think up the new direction that it could go from Evolution to a new dimension, Chris came up with an idea of going through different TV shows. So Crash would go through different television channels, and each level would be based on a different thing, and he had an idea of a Western themed thing.
So when was he? This must have been
this
pretty
was
early.
Early 2003. So it was right at the end of Evolution, and you actually do have the document in here, which I don't think we can show.
Do we?
Yeah.
But I haven't got it, so at the moment maybe we can
we'll
edit
put
it in later.
Yeah, if we're allowed to. But yeah, so there was a talk of a train thing there, which I think then the discussions were still going on when I joined. So at that point,
this could have been another game that we could have branched into doing after.
Right. But I think this bit was going to go into the Twinsanity thing. This is all from what I remember. But Danny Flynn, I definitely remember Danny Flynn doing some train concept art too. So it must have been probably just before I started. They were working on a train idea, which I don't know if that coincides with what you were doing. But it was
it might be something I've completely forgotten. But as far as I know, once we got going with what became Crash Twinsanity, if you don't know, it was called, was it a Whole New Dimension?
So
was
it's
the first
called,
name we came up with it.
So Evolution.
That
got
sliced.
Then Whole New Dimension, but also fully fluxed for a small amount of time.
I don't think it. I think that was our Australian artist used to like saying things were fully, something that I can't say on this video without it getting censored. He used to describe everything that was wrong in the game. He said it was fully and so I think that was just a joke, wasn't it? I don't think we were ever seriously considering
documents, but it probably is just an internal joke.
And then we called it Crash Unlimited for a bit, didn't we?
That's right. Which is on the demo.
And if you don't already know, the final name Crash Twinsanity came from Mr. Keith Webb himself.
Right,
we were doing overtime on a Saturday. Our American producer just ran in and was like, "Guys, we need a final name in like the next 5 minutes." And we're all like, I don't know, I haven't got a clue. And Keith had obviously already thought about this. He was like,
I hadn't actually.
What about Crash Twinsanity? And it was like, that'll do. And then that was final.
Yeah, I think it was like, originally it was Crash Twisted Twinsanity or something, I don't know, and then got rid of Twisted. But I mean, it worked. But they literally needed to trademark it like the following Monday or something. They had it was unlimited.
Like, I never got too involved in all the production legal side, but you have to do a lot of stuff quite far in advance. Anyway, we've got sidetracked. So train level.
I
don't know, it's got to be just in the ideas section, hasn't it? I mean, I did make a test level, but I don't know if it was, I don't know, it's not as much of a test level as some of the other things. So I think we put it as a tier D. Right, next, Greyscale. I mean, I never spoke to you about this. I've obviously seen this before, but here we see the ant enemies that were in the final game with the jetpacks. I just go on. You can talk us through this.
Well, so I think the original, if we had probably more time to develop the 10th dimension, it would have had kind of bird motifs in there to kind of reference the twins. Also some Tim Burton-esque stuff in there. But I think we were kind of thinking, how do we make it visually distinct? And one of the ideas was you have Crash, the main character, in colour, and the rest of the environment in grayscale or black and white. So these are just some test shots to see how that might work, I think.
We never built anything for this, did we?
No.
Right, so I think it's got to be concept art.
Yeah.
Was this one of the bits of concept art that you ended up unlocking?
I believe so.
From the crystals?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Good thing you made all that concept art, so we had some content
the original
to unlock
plan,
with the crystals.
So the original plan, this concept art was all just, that's why it's quite scrappy in some cases, is because it was just internal. It was just for, knocking them out for like the world eyes to kind of get an idea of what it would look like. And then as it got to the end of the game, we thought, hang on a minute, we've got nothing to reward the player with when they collect all the gems.
I remember a mad rush adding all these gems into the game.
Right.
Like so many of them are just like, find somewhere in the level, put it there. It wasn't really done that professionally, in my opinion.
Okay.
But it goes in tier C concept art, I think.
Fair enough.
Right, I think the next one's quite interesting. So there was once upon a time a turtle in the game, and the turtle was around for quite a while. I think he was built back in Crash Evolution days, maybe slightly afterwards, and I don't know what happened. Like, it was playable, it was scripted, it was in, I definitely had it in the Windmill level that we talked about earlier. It actually had spikes on its back, because the idea was Crash, obviously he can spin into things, he can jump on things, and he can slide into things. We wanted an enemy that you had to slide into, because obviously spikes on your back, you can't jump on him, you can't spin into him. So this was an enemy that you were supposed to use the slide move, and I don't really know what happened. I think we forgot about him. He was in the Windmill test level that I spoke about. I actually saw, I think we talked about it earlier, our old boss, the guy who created Traveller's Tales, John Burton. He runs the Game Hut channel, which you might have seen. We'll try and splice in this section of the video. There used to be the one final instance of this turtle being in the game was at the end of the first beach path, just before the Mecha Bandicoot fight. You'd slide into him and he'd get knocked into a load of nitro crates. It was kind of fun to do. It ended I'm a bit bitter about this. He ended up getting deleted and replaced with that skunk who complains about having to go backwards and forwards.
It was based on you, John.
It was based on me.
Based
me
on
and
you.
Paul had these arguments that we couldn't possibly have enemies going backwards and forwards anymore because it's 2004. Things need to have moved on. But we struggled to get anything else working that well. So the turtle was deleted to make way for a humorous cutscene.
Right.
And
which John is still bitter about.
So
we're going to play that cutscene now.
Slightly bitter. I don't know.
10
I would have
times in a
preferred
row,
to
yeah.
have maybe moved him slightly earlier in the level and then had the cutscene, but never mind.
But we'll show some footage of the...
Like we said, John Burton found an old build of the game that still had this in, so I think Keith's going to try and edit this a bit nicely after we're done. Hopefully we can see the turtle. So I don't know. I think this has got to go in S tier. This was actually in the game,
Right.
was working, had final art,
Okay.
and just kind of got shoved out.
Right. At that
Not the
point-
biggest loss. I mean, it kind of looks quite cool, but it's just a little kind of turtle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At
sad
that-
to see him go, but
At that point, we were trying to remove all traces of John McCann in the game at all, so, you know.
I think people remember Crash Twinsanity for its kind of zaniness rather than from the bog standard stock enemies. So probably he had to go to make way.
Do you know who built
great-
him? Was Chris built him?
I don't know. It looks kind of Chris-esque,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. We'd have to ask. I don't know who built a lot of the enemies.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it looks...
I think we should move on. So for the grand finale, Gone a Bit Coco, like probably the biggest thing that was deleted from the game. It was in the game right from, I think, did we think of it in Crash
Right.
Crash Evolution days?
No, so it wasn't... So, because I was trying to think. So I started 2003. I didn't have much to do with Gone a Bit Coco, which means it would have been developed before I started, so before March 2003, which means it must have been in that period when we're playing around with the whole new dimension aspect of it. So I believe it probably started as a new dimension, like a cute dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it was
This might
repurposed
have been
later
one,
on
yeah.
into Coco's.
I can't
Coco's
remember who
mind.
had all these ideas. But what we're seeing here, this was actually in the game so long that this was the original art, and it was all this art was remade to look better near the end,
Mm-hmm.
and then we ended up just not having enough time to finish it and make it a proper full level. So this is probably the one thing that was a victim of time constraints, I think,
probably,
because everything else we kind of dropped one thing to kind of work on a different idea. This was actually supposed to be in the game. We were planning it for ages, and then we had to drop it because we didn't have enough time. So
it would have when it was repurposed to be inside Coco's mind, it would have fitted in. I think just after. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was around, or maybe before you get to the airship. I can't remember. Yeah,
I can't remember
we
either.
can.
But
I'll remember.
we're planning a whole video on Gone a Bit Coco
Yeah.
to tantalise all the real Crash fans out there. But for now, I think we're going to have to leave it at that. I think this has got to be S tier, hasn't it? Because it was almost a completed level.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it wasn't that complete. We had, I'd say, full art, enough enemies to fill the level. We had all the characters to go in it.
Yeah.
We just never really strung a whole level together.
But you're going to do a
out of it.
different video about that.
We're going to try doing another video because we found loads of archaic stuff.
Yeah.
So as a final thing, the pink elephant from the Gone a Bit Coco level.
Right.
I think this is special because I didn't realise this until recently.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone, what's the
So
name of this Crash game?
It's called Crash on the Run, and it's a
Yeah,
it's a
this new
mobile
Crash
game.
game.
Came about 4 years ago, maybe. A mobile game, auto runner game.
Someone somewhere must have seen this elephant and thought they'd resurrect it. So this was cut from Crash Twinsanity, but was resurrected almost 20 years later in another game.
Yeah.
It works quite differently in Crash on the Run from what I've seen. He kind of chases the player through a level, doesn't he?
Okay.
Whereas in Gone a Bit Coco, he just kind of waddled around in the level, and he used to spawn the smaller creatures out of his trunk.
Yeah.
So Cortex had to kind of blast the crap out of him before he got overrun with these little cute things. But like I said, we're gonna see if we can make a video about that.
But he outlived everybody, you know. He
did. So this has got to be S tier cut content. In fact, if there was a tier above S tier, he'd probably have to go in there, because he did end up coming back to life and living to fight another day.
That's right.
In Crash on the Run.
Well done, elephant.
So if you worked on Crash on the Run and you know the story of why this elephant was resurrected, I'd really be interested to know how you found out about him, because someone must have kept all the art at Universal. Do they still own the rights? I don't even know who owns Crash Bandicoot anymore. But someone must have got an archive, and they must have trawled through it and found it and thought that could be quite funny. But there we go. There's probably loads more. We might do a part 2 of this.
Part 2. Because we're discovering stuff ourselves, you know. Most of it, and we're kind of trying to figure out how things fit together. Because
20 years ago, that's like half my life ago.
Right.
So I've forgotten a lot of stuff, and we found quite a lot of old documents. We'll have to trawl through it and see what interesting stuff we can find.
Yeah.
But for now, I think that is the end of our first video. So thank you very much to all the Crash fans out there who keep asking us questions 20 years later. Hopefully this video wasn't too boring. I'd say it's definitely a video for the real Crash fans. There's definitely a lot of you out there, because somehow I've managed to get 700 subscribers on my channel with very little effort. So hopefully this is something to keep you going, and maybe we'll have some more,
we'll do some more
interesting stuff in a few weeks. So
okay.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.